Welcome back to the channel, and this is going to be a redo of the Discord.net tutorial. The original one was bad. Um, I didn't explain everything correctly, or I forgot to explain stuff, and I decided just to redo it instead of finishing it because it's always good to restart doing something. Um, so so I'm going to try and explain things better and explain more things because there's some points where I was like, I should have explained that and stuff. So I'm going to be using Visual Studio 2019. I don't remember if I'm using Enterprise or Community, but for most people, they're probably going to use Community. It might look, um, no, it'll look the same. It's just um, Enterprise has more features than Community. I believe I'm using Enterprise because I'm a student, so I get Enterprise for free. Um, and that goes with almost any IDE. If you're a student, you can get the good IDEs versions for free because it's technically education purposes. Um, but yeah, so we're going to be doing this. So we're doing Discord.net, which is written in C Sharp. If you don't know what C Sharp is, then C Sharp is basically a programming language that Microsoft developed in not 2020, in 20. Why am I saying 20? 2000. Um, so it's a considered a general purpose language. So general purpose just means that it can be used for all sorts of things: object oriented, scripting, web development, like all those kind of things. It can be used for anything. If you want like an example of what something will look like besides C sharp, Python is a general purpose as well. I don't know too much about Python, but I know it is a general purpose language. But we're going to be using C sharp because it's more superior. Um, so what makes C sharp general purpose? Because there's a reason for it, and many people would say because that's C sharp. The actual answer is not because of that. C sharp is actually originally more of an object oriented language over a general purpose. The reason why it is considered general purpose is because of its runtime environments. When I say runtime environments, I'm referring to .NET. So we have .NET Core, .NET Framework, ASP.NET. You also have .NET Standard, and you have .NET, like, and there's other ones. But all of those do different things, which is what makes C Sharp a general purpose language, is because of the runtimes can alter what it's going to be useful for. So for our case, we're going to be using .NET Core. Um, Version 3.1, but you don't need to know the version. It's just the latest version, which is 3.1. Um, but we're going to be using that. You could use .NET Framework or .NET Standard. This Discord.net works with those versions. Um, I did want to use .NET version 5 because it's more powerful than all the runtime environments and other languages. Its runtime is really good, and it's the most powerful runtime environment out there. But Discord.net can is not compatible with it, which it should be, but it's not. So we're just going to use .NET Core. But like I say, you can use .NET Framework as well or .NET Standard. It will work. Discord.net was actually made with .NET Framework and .NET Standard, from what I remember. But anyway, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go to here, and this you won't have this if you're just install Visual Studio in 2019 or 2017. You won't have this here, but you would just look over here, and it should be like the first thing you see. You want this one, console app.net core. I mean, you can just name this to be whatever. I'm just going to call it that. And you just hit enter and it'll do everything for you. Okay, so this is Visual Studio. If you're using, you can, I forgot to say this, but you can also use Visual Studio Code. It's much different how you would create the project because you actually have to use the .NET CLI, so command line interface. Um, you can also use other IDEs. Um, as long as they have IntelliSense and they have options for you to use NuGet, because NuGet is its package manager. And if you don't have access, like if your ID doesn't have NuGet built into it, then you actually have to go and install NuGet in order for you to use NuGet packages for your project, which is a little bit harder um, and a little bit more confusing, even though it's like commands are actually straightforward. It's just more work to just do that. So I would just recommend just use an IDE that actually has NuGet built into it, as well with C Sharp IntelliSense. Um, so I know that Visual Studio 2017 and 2019 has that already for you because it was designed for C Sharp and C++. It specifically was originally designed for that, but then it started to go branch out and start being able to work with other languages. Visual Studio Code has a extension for it, which I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'll probably do a video on that, like how to set up a C Sharp project inside of Visual Studio Code, because it is slightly confusing if you don't know what the extension is to do that and how to use the extension. Okay, but anyway, so once you're here, you're basically here, and so we go to here to tools if you're in Visual Studio. Um, it's both 17 and 19 work the exact same. There's not much difference. But anyway, so you want to hit tools and then you want to go down to NuGet Package Manager. And then you go to the second option, Manage NuGet Package for a Solution. And then you'll have this. So we just want to go to Browse. Install is just going to show us what we have installed. But we want to go to Browse so we can get our packages. Okay, so the first thing we need, of course, is Discord.net. Okay, so we're going to install Discord.net here. And we're going to install. We're going to accept that. Make sure you accept that. Basically, what that is asking you is if you are going to basically follow through with the license there. If you do not accept it, like if you decline it, then you can't use those because you didn't accept the license. So make sure you always accept it, just so then you can use it. Yeah. And then so we have that. We are also going to get something else for Discord, which is going to be Discord Interactive. Interactive, what it does is basically it's like weighing messages, so it's more of like for user interactions basically, so we can use it to wait for messages from a user after command execution. We can also use it for Pagination embeds, which usually just means embeds with the reactions, like the error reactions that you can press, and it will change the embed to the next page or back a page. So that's what pagination embeds are. We can also do some other things with it, but the main reason why we're going to have this is for the pagination embed and for awaiting messages. So once you have that installed, we're going to need to do we need a few more packages. So the next package we need is Microsoft extensions. And we're going to wait for it to think about it. I spelled it wrong. Should be like see Microsoft. I spelled Microsoft wrong. Microsoft extensions, and then we need dependency injection. This one. we want this one. This one will allow us to use work more with services, which services are basically dependencies. Dependencies are basically um, like what your file depends on or your project depends on. So services are just basically like that, but we can declare what they are and get the instance of those of our dependencies and such. You'll see why I'm talking about, like why I say it's more like dependencies, because it technically is a dependency, but it's not. It's really hard to explain what services are. You can look up videos or look up stuff about services and they'll explain it much better than me, because I haven't worked too much with services except for bot development, which I don't work heavily with services that much. Only time I use services like are just to pass in the client and the command service, which we will work with, and to get them from in our commands or from other files. Okay, then we're going to need to have this. This is optional. You don't have to have this, but I'm going to have this here. This is Serolog. Serolog is basically a logger. Um, that's it. It's it. If you're going to choose to use Serolog, then you're going to need to get Serolog and Serolog.syncs.console. Uh, this one is going to just allow Serolog to communicate with our console, basically just to send logs there. That's about it for it. Okay, and then we have everything we need. Okay, we're going to come back here. So we're going to just make a folder. And we're just going to call it core. You can call it whatever, but core makes more sense because it is the core of our project. And then inside here, we're going to just have a class here. And we're going to call this to be bot. You can name this to be whatever you want. But just try to make sure that is related to what the file is. Which in this case is going to handle all of our creation of our bot, so such as initializing our client, initializing our client service, or initializing our services, logging the bot in, starting the bot, like that kind of stuff. So just like a an like just a tip, just make sure that your file is related to what is happening in the file, so then you know ways, or if someone's reading your code or your program basically, they gotta understand what everything is. So if you name it something that's not related to it, then they won't understand what that file is for, and they won't even look into it. Well, unless if it's like a crazy name, then they might, but most of the time they won't. Okay. So in here, we're gonna make sure that this class is gonna be public. Okay. So we have that. So the first thing we're going to do is make some of our class variables, and we're going to make sure that these are private. If we have them public, then it's bad practice if we were to do that. Whereas if we were to make them private, reason for it is just because of game development or security reasons. If you make it public, then any class anywhere can modify it or get it. If we had it private, then they can't. Only our file can do it. But there's ways to make something public but deny access to get or a set. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So we're going to have a private Discord socket client. And we're going to just call this be client. Get and set. This is what I was talking about. Get and set is like basically like permissions, if you want to think of it that way. So right now they're having a private permissions of get and this set. So they're both private. Okay. If so, that just means only this file can get it and set it basically. But if we were to have this be public, then this changes them to be public. So we can any file, any class can get it or set it. But if we were to do private set, this means that anywhere, any class can get it, but only this class can set it. And if we were to put private in front of the get, then that just means that any file, any class can set it, but only this class can get it. So this is like a alternative of a get and a set in a way, but usually want to make the actual getter and setters methods, but you don't have to. But yeah, so make sure you have it be private. It's always a good habit to do that. You don't have to, but it's always a good habit. So we have that, and then we're going to make a private command service. and we're going to call this be commands, get in a set, private, and then we're going to have this be interactive, interactive service, and we're going to call this be interactive, and get in a set. Okay, we need a private iService provider. This is what I'm talking about. This is going to be our service provider, so this is going to handle all of our services basically, and that's it for class variables. That I believe we might add more, but right now, from what I'm seeing or remembering, that's about right. Then we're going to make a constructor, and we're going to call it just Bob, because that's the constructor. If we were to name it something else, then it's not a constructor. Okay? So constructor, if you don't know, basically its job is to construct everything that we need it to do. In our case, we need it to construct our class variables. So the first one we're going to do is client, and we're just going to do is a client equals a new Discord socket client, and it wants to have a config here. So we're going to do a new Discord socket config, and we're going to set the properties with the braces. Braces are going to allow us, if we're like appending them to a class, like a new instance of a class, that allows us to modify the variables in it, or to just basically set them. So what we're going to do here is going to be a log level, and we're going to have this be log equals to log severity. And it's going to be debug. You can have this be verbose if you don't want it to send everything. Using Discord. Yeah, so debug basically just tells it to just give us everything. We don't care what it is, just give us everything. Verbose just means give us the information that is needed, like necessary information, not everything. So if you want just to have it be verbose, then just make it verbose. But for testing purposes, it's always good to have it be debugged, because then you can see what's exactly happening. You'll see what I'm talking about. Like it'll send everything to us. And then we're gonna do commands. And this is gonna be a new command service. And this is also going. We're gonna also pass a command service config here. Let me actually increase my text here. That didn't work. That didn't work either. There we go. That's much better. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna also do a log level, and we're just gonna make it be debug as well. You can, like I said, you can have this be verbose if you want to. Error just means to send us errors. Warning just tells it to send errors. Critical, I don't remember what that does. Critical errors that like basically will terminate the bot. So yeah. So we're gonna have this be debug. Okay, and then we're also going to have a case sensitive commands. So this is just basically saying the difference. We're gonna have to separate the difference between lowercase, like all lowercase help, and uppercase help. Like those are going to be two different entities. We just want the lowercase help. So yeah. Then what we're going to do is default run mode, and we're just going to make this be run mode.async. Basically what this is saying is just to run the commands by default into a asynchronous run mode. Asynchronous just means we're gonna have stuff that are gonna wait. We're gonna put them into their own threads, and then we're going to wait for those threads to finish before we can continue. If we were to have this be synchronously, which is what most things are, C# is usually in sync, usually most of the time. That just means that we're not going to wait for anything. We're just going to execute in a line, like a list, because programming is basically like instructions. They're procedures. We're telling it what to do, what is something, so they know what to do next. So that's what it is, and we want things to be async because we're going to have our bot do multiple things at once. And if we were to have it to not wait for stuff, then it will execute, and there could be conflicts of us getting no values because we're not waiting for certain things. Also because of Discord wants us to run this in, or Discord.net wants us to run it in async. So we have to use a wait when we're sending messages. We have to use a wait when we're like saying stuff with the client, that kind of stuff. So we want to make sure it's going to be default in run mode. We're going to also add one more here, and we're going to do ignore extra args, and we're going to make this be true. This just means that the bot's just going to ignore whatever is dependent to the command that's more than what it needs. So if we were to have like a command like a help command where we're just wanting one word, if they add multiple words, it's going to ignore those words and then only accept that one word that they first sent. That's basically what it means. It also prevents the command error of bad args count, which you might encounter if you don't have this here and you don't have error handling for it. But yeah, next we're going to do is interactive. And it's going to be a new interactive service, and we're going to pass in client, and we're going to also pass in the new interactive service config default timeout. So this basically just means how long are we going to wait until everything's going to time out, basically. So when we're waiting for a message, how long is it going to take until it will stop looking for or waiting for a message? Basically what that means. We're going to have this be a time span, and we're going to have this be from minutes. You can change this to be whatever you want, but I'm going to make it to be 2 minutes. Time span just basically converts whatever we put in to milliseconds, because all programming languages goes based off milliseconds because it's more accurate than if we were to say minutes, because minutes can be any time. Whereas we usually have our time variables are usually based off of milliseconds. So milliseconds is more accurate for it to actually determine how long it needs to wait, or like what it needs to do with time. Okay, and that's all we need there. Now we're going to do is a log.logger. This is going to set our logger. If you don't need to do this, if you don't have Serolog, you can ignore this step, but if you want to use Serolog, then follow this. What we're going to do is a logger configuration. Then we're going to do is a minimum level, and then we're going to do is debug. Then minimum level dot information. Okay. Then we're going to do minimum level dot override Microsoft, and then we're going to do log event levels. Then we're going to do debug first dot minimum level dot override Microsoft. Then we're doing that again, and we're going to do information here. Then what we're going to want it to do is write to, and we're going to say console. Then we're going to tell it to create the logger. There we go. Now I'm going to do something here, and it's going to be setting the output template. So this is basically what is the pattern, like a string pattern for it to use when creating the logs. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have timestamp, and it's going to be HHMMSS. Okay. And then we're going to have here is going to be level U4. I'll explain what this all means, or at least I can try. Message LJ, new line, and then we're going to have exception, and then that's it. So the braces here just is a way for it to know that we're asking for, like that's going to be a placeholder. So it will know that timestamp here is a placeholder. And then, so right here is timestamp, so we're just asking for the hours, minute, and seconds. So the time basically, and with pending it with timestamp, which is what the date is. Then we're going to have level U4. U4 just means uppercase 4 letters. So the first 4 letters of something. Debug is going to be weird because it's not going to be 4. But if we were to do 5, then information will look weird. So we're mostly going to be using information most of the time. You can change the 4 to a 3 if you want to, and then it would just look like DEB or INF. The number here just means how many letters we want to use. The U here just means all uppercase. If you wanted to have it all lowercase, then you would just add a L, I believe, for lowercase. Then we're going to have message here. Message is basically like what we're basically appending or like telling it to show. Um, the L and the J, I do not know what that means. But I just know that it's like that. It needs to be like that. It's just an option. You can probably look it up in Serolog's like documentation. A new line just means we're going to make a new line, an exception if there is an exception, and then we're going to just add it on a new line. And then that's it. That's very straightforward, basically. Okay? Now we're going to come down here and we're actually going to make a new class, and this is going to be a private class because we just need to make one for here. You don't need to make a class actually. You can just like do it on your own, but it looks nicer if you have a class. You'll see what I'm talking about. But anyway, so we're gonna have a private, and it's gonna be a service, not iService. It should be a service provider. iService just is the interface, or yeah, interface. But build service provider. We don't need to do that because we can just do this new service collection. Then what we're going to do is an add singleton, and we're going to pass in the client. Okay? And then we're going to do add singleton again, and we're going to pass in the commands. One more time, and we're going to add the interactive, and one last time, and we're going to pass in log.logger. Okay, and then we're just going to do build service provider. Okay, so the arrow function here just means we're going to return it. Like, we just basically want whatever is appended to it. So this is going to return this. So it will return it to a service provider with these things appended to it. Okay, now we can do services is equals to a build service provider. And then there we go. And then what we're going to do is a public here. We're going to do a public async task. Task is a return type, but appended with async. So async task, it's treated like a void statement, so it doesn't return anything. And then we're going to just make this async, main async. Okay. So yeah, so like I was saying, basically task is a return type, but when it's appended to async, it's void basically. But if we didn't have async there, then it would be the return type of task. Return types just means what we're going to return, like what type is the return value it's going to be. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to do the arrow again. We're going to do arrow, a new bot, dot main async. So there's a problem here. So stack void main here is the main method. This is where it's going to execute here because that's most languages are going to be like that. But there's a problem here. You can see here there's green signaling lines meaning that something is wrong or is a warning. Basically saying that this call cannot be awaited. And that's very true because we do not have async here. If we were to add sync here or async, then this would not be the main method. Because the main method has to be a stack void main with a string array with args. Like that's literally the main method. So how we bypass this is we do dot get awaiter dot get result, and then now this basically turns this basically runs it into the async using the system threading dot task. And then we get the results. So it basically converts this into a sync, like a sync method in a way, but still being run in a thread that is running it as async. Very confusing. I know. I was confused when trying to learn it. But now we're going to come over here. We're going to make a new class. This is going to be called config.cs. Okay. So this class is basically going to be handling all of our configurations. So like our bot token, our bot prefix, and all that stuff. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do is a public struct. Struct is basically like a variable interface in a way. And then we're going to call this to be bot config. And yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do in here is going to be a private string token. Getting a set. And basically what we're going to wait, I forgot one more class variable or struct variable. It's going to be a private string prefix, get an accept, but this can actually be a public. We just want to have the token to be private because it's more sensitive, and we're just going to basically put a private set on a prefix, so it can't be changed. Okay. Then what we're going to do here is going to be a public string token. Not public string get token. Okay. Basically what we're going to do is return token. Okay. So basically that's just a public get, but we're going to also add a public void, and it's going to be this pose token. The reason why we're going to have this is just so then if we were to do eval, if you were in, like, basically if you were going to do eval, this is going to pose the token right after we log the bot in. So then people can't, like, get your token. It's literally just removing it from the instance of our bot. Like, right after we just need it. So, we're going to have this here. And we're just going to do is token equals that. And then that's it. And then we can come up here. I forgot, I was paused it because I was trying to make sure I was right. But you just add this here. And yeah, this is going to be a static construct. So this class is going to be static, but we need a few more things here. We need to have a private static string. And we're going to call this the config folder. And we're just going to be called, it's going to have the value of resources. Okay, private static string config file, and that's going to be called config.json. I mean, it's going to have the value of, and then we're going to have private static string config path, and the value is going to be config folder plus, and then we're going to have a string, and we're going to put the /, and then we're going to do config file. The reason why we have this is kind of like a shortcut, and also because later on we're going to need to use these values. Later on, like, not later on, but when we're using it, if we need to change the path of it, we can change this here, and then it will change everything for us. We don't have to go through and keep doing it to every single one, which is nice. So what we're going to do here is going to be a static config. Okay, then the first thing we need to do is check if the directory of resources exists. So we're going to do an if, then we're going to do directory.exists, and it's going to be config folder, and then we're going to do 2-line here, so that just means we're not going to use braces, and we're just going to put directory.create directory config folder. But there's a but here's the thing. If you look at the statement is actually, it's correct, but it's not what we want. So in this case, it's just saying that if the directory does exist, then we're going to create it. We need to add a not here. So this is just going to say if it does not exist, then we're going to create it. Make sure you have that not there or it will not work. I just want to point that out. Now what we're going to do is an if file.exists, so we're going to check if the file exists, and this is going to want the config path, so the path to the file. This is going to be based off of your bin, like in the NetCore app 3.1. You'll see, I'll show you where it is, but this is going to be checking in there. We're going to add an else here as well. So in this one, this one's basically saying So this if is going to say if it does not exist. So then now what we're going to do is a bot equals a new bot config. Okay. Then what we're going to do is a var JSON equals a JSON convert dot serialize bot. So this is basically going to convert the bot, like our bot config, into JSON readable like string basically. Then what we're going to do is a file dot write all text config path, and we're also going to add JSON here. And we're going to add one more thing here, and that's going to be formatting. Format. So formatting dot indent. This is just basically going to format it to be proper JSON, whereas if we didn't have this, it will just be all in one line. Okay, now we're going to come over here, and this is basically saying if it does exist, then we want to load that into our config. So what we're going to do here is var JSON equals JSON convert, not JSON convert. We need to do is a file dot read all text config path. Then we can do bot equals JSON convert dot c deserialize. This is a generic type, so generic type just means it can be whatever type we want it to be, but we want a specific type, so we just want it to be the type of bot config. Okay, then we're just going to pass JSON in, and now it's going to convert it into our bot config. But we're going to come down here. You do not need to add this, but if you want to, you can. This is basically just going to change the names to be like whatever you want it to be. So proper JSON would be all lowercase. I think proper JSON is snake case, where it's all lowercase with underscores to break up the words. I don't remember what the proper JSON is. I just know it likes to be lowercase. It could be camel case. But we're going to have this be token here. JSON property is just going to make it to be type lowercase token basically. Then we're going to do that again, and we're just going to do it for the prefix. Okay. Now we have that. That's all we needed in config. Okay. Now we're going to come over here. Now what we're going to do is an if statement. So we're going to say if the string is null or white space, so it's empty, then we don't want to execute. We want to return, but create the file for us. So what we're going to do here is the string dot is null or white space, and what we're going to do here is config dot bot dot get token. Okay. If it is, and then we're going to return. By default, if you do this, this is considered a check. If you append a return to it, then it's by default it will always be else. Just wanted to say that because I will be saying that a lot, and people might be confused what I'm saying by that. Else by default just means that we return, so it's an else. It's a if check, and that's it. That's basically it. Okay. Now what we're going to do here is basically await bot, not bot, client dot login async token type. We want token type to be bot because it is a bot, and then we're going to do config dot bot dot get token. Okay, and then we're going to come down here and we're just going to do config dot bot dot depose token, so people now can't get our token. Now we do is await client dot start async. Okay. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. So we can run this bot to make sure it's logged in and everything and get the config. So let's do that real quick. Here's my console, and it stopped because we told it to. So where is it? It's going to be, so you want to go to the open containing folder. So you're going to be over here, go to bin here, debug, netcore apps, 33.1, resources, and there's your config. It'll look like this. So we need to change this to be that. So string for both of them because they are strings. So that, and I'll be right back, but you want to put your token here. but I'm going to cut here so then I can put my token in and not have it leaked. So be right. Okay, I'm back and I just put my token in. Now we can run it, okay? So let's run it. Okay, so we're gonna just run it here. And look at that. The bot stopped. And yes, that's because it was supposed to do that. The reason for it is because by default, how it works is that we tell it to basically log in. Okay, so we tell it log in. Then what we want to do is start, and then we're done. That it does what it needs to do, and that's the one thing that people need to understand is what you tell the your program to do, it will always do exactly that. So if it's wrong, then it's not because it's wrong, it's because you put something in that is causing it to do what you don't want it to do. In our case, we're telling it to do everything it needs to do. It's doing everything we want it to do, but it's not how we want to do it. So basically what we need to do here is await task.delay -1. Basically what this do is prevent the bot or the program from like exiting out, or in our exiting just means that it stops before we tell it to. So now if you were to run it now, it hasn't done it, and if we go to here, we can see that it's on, and I'm using Panda 2.0 right now as the bot, my testing bot, so you can see it's on. Okay, um, but you may be wondering, why is there nothing in the console? Because we didn't tell it to do anything like that yet. So what we need to do here is make a new folder in the core, and we're going to call this speed handlers. You can call this whatever you want, like I said, but make sure it's more related to what's happening in it. We're going to make a new class, and we're going to call this be command handler dot cs. Okay, this is going to handle all commands like loading them and such. We're going to do public class here, and then what we're going to do is a private command service commands, and we do get and set. You need to do private iLogger. If you're remember, if anything I talk about is Serilog, you don't have to do it if you are not using Serilog. But if you are, then follow this. We're gonna call this be logger, and then we do get and a set. Then we do private iService provider underscore services. You may be wondering why I'm putting underscore here. The reason for it is it's more for less confusion. You'll see what I'm talking about. Because we're going to do a public constructor command handler, and we're going to pass an iService provider services. Okay, if you didn't have the underscore here, then what would happen is we would have to do this dot services equals services. It's kind of confusing, right? So the way we do this, and this is how most people do it, is to put an underscore here. There we go. It's kind of less confusing because we can do, tell the difference between the two. Even though the other one, like the other method, using this, you can tell which one is which. It's just more fluent if you actually do it this way. There's other languages that uses the underscore for like private stuff. I have done that where I put private stuff like private variable names with underscores because they're private. I've done that before. I do that in JavaScript or TypeScript because TypeScript has private visibility modifiers, which is what private, public, protect, virtue, like all that stuff. That's visibility modifiers. TypeScript has that, and I usually use underscores to distinctly show that it's private. But anyway, so we're gonna have that. Now we're gonna do is commands is equals to a services dot get required service, and we want command service because it's generic type. We want that. Basically, what this does, and this is coming from the Microsoft extensions dot dependency injection. Basically, what this does is gets the instance of the command service. So whatever we put in our bot, it's going to grab that instance and pass it into the commands or command variable in this class. Now we're going to do that with the logger. So we're going to do services dot get required service, and we're going to do is a iLogger, and that would be the log.logger in the bot class. Okay. You may be wondering, why am I not using our class variable services? Just logically, it's better to use the variable that you ask for the most in certain things. So in this case, we ask for services as our parameter and the constructor. So it's more understandable to use that more than using our class variable and just passing in, because it's kind of redundant of why we have that there in the first place. But you can do it whatever way you want to do it, as long as it works, it works. But just logically, it makes more sense doing it this way. Okay, now what we're going to do is a public async task. We need to import task, the system.threading.task. You have to import that. Then what we want to do is an init async. You can call this whatever you want, but init async makes more sense because we're initializing some stuff. Now what we're going to do is await commands dot add modules async, and then it wants to have assembly dot get entry, so get entry assembly. Then we want to pass in underscore services. Now what this says is we're going to have commands, and they're going to be in their own files, and each class is going to be considered a module. So this is what this does, is just passes those modules that it finds in our assembly into our command service, and basically holds all of our commands. It's that simple. This is literally all we need, but we're going to add a few more things here just so we can know that the commands were actually successfully logged in. So we're going to just do a for each loop. So for each var command in commands dot commands. Kind of redundant doing it that way, but meh. Then we're going to do logger. If you don't, you can use console.writeline if you want to, if you're not using Serolog, but if you are, then it's better to use Serolog here. And then we're just going to do here is a $sign notation, which means we're going to inject a object into our string, and that's going to be command. And we're going to express as a object that's being injected with the braces. Then we're going to do is command dot name. Now we just do was loaded. There we go. And that's it. That's all we need to do in here. We can add more like the subscribers to the commands, which we will do in the next episode. Would just be more into what subscribers are. We're just going to be briefly doing that just so that we can get the bot like loaded and all that stuff. But I'll talk more about what subscribers are and how to make them in the next video. Okay, now we're going to make is a new class here, and this is going to be called event handler.cs. This is going to handle all of our events with Discord and all that kind of stuff, basically. This is going to also be a public class here. Then we're going to do is private Discord socket client get in a set private command service commands get in a set private iLogger logger private iService provider services underscore services. You may be wondering, why am I doing this all in uppercase or like uppercase variable names? This is called Pascal. JavaScript. C# uses Pascal. As you can tell, a lot of this is uppercase. Or like the first letter of each word is uppercase. Because that's what Pascal is. Pascal and camel case work exactly the same. However, camel case, the first word and the variable declaration name, or whatever the declaration name is for, the first word in it is lowercase. Whereas Pascal, all the words are uppercase to differentiate each of the words in the variable, or not variable, but like the declaration of where it's for. Okay, now what we're gonna do is a public um, constructor for event handler, and we want to have iService provider services. Okay, now what we're going to do is client equals services dot get required services or service, and we want to have Discord socket client, and then what we want to do here is also commands equals services dot get required service command service. Then what we're going to do here is logger equals services dot get required service, and what we're going to do is iLogger. Now we can pass in services equals services. There we go. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to do a public task, not async task, but task, and we want to do is init async. The reason why we are not doing async task here is specifically because we don't need async. We don't need to wait stuff. If we don't need to wait stuff, then it's better not to add that keyword there. So now task is a return type. So how we fix this is we just do return task dot complete task, and then there we go. Now it has a return type and it will not complain. Now we're going to work with subscribers, but I won't explain too much about them, but you'll get the gist of it. Client.ready, or actually let's do logs first. So client.log, and then we're going to do a plus equals, and you see where it says press tab to insert. Just hit tab if you're in Visual Studio 2017 or 2019. Just press that, and you can name this whatever. I'm going to leave that there. Okay, then we're going to do client. Not client, but commands dot log. And we're going to do the same thing here. Now what we're going to do is client dot ready tab, and I'm going to call this be ready event, but you can name this be whatever you want. Then we're going to do client dot message received, and I'm just going to call this be message event. Okay, and this is what subscribers are. Well, a brief idea of them. There's multiple ways of doing a subscriber, but this is like the easiest way to do them. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to work with the client log first, and we're going to leave that to be task. So we're going to do return task dot complete task. Then we're going to do logger. If you're using Serolog, logger. If you're not, console.write line. If you do that, then you have to like keep on writing in your string. You're basically like how you want it to be formatted. It's always nice to have times there, like where and such. This is why I like Serolog, is because we can define it and we can just pass in what we want to show, and it has a already pre-built template for us that we don't have to keep writing every single time. So it's going to be information, and then we can just do string inject. Actually, no, we don't. We can just do args.message. There you go. But I'm actually going to do something real quick. I'm actually going to make this more helpful here. What we're going to do here is basically source, and then it's going to be args.source, and then I'm going to do is that, and then I'm going to do arg.message. And then I can just, we can just come over here, copy that, because they're going to be the exact same way, and just do that. There we go. Now we're going to make this be async. Then we're going to remove this, throw new not implemented exception. And then we're going to do logger here, dot information. And then we're going to just do client dot current user dot username is ready. So ready event will just execute once, and it will only execute when the bot is ready, once it's logged in and everything. Okay, Now what we're going to do is await client dot set status. So this is where you can set your bot status. Going to use just do user status, and then I'm just going to make it online. You can change it to be whatever you want it to be. And then we're going to do wait here client dot set game async or activity if you want to. They both work the exact same way. And we're going to do a dollar notation here. And I'm going to do is config dot bot dot prefix, and then we just do help here. We'll add a help command later on, and then we're going to do in, and then we can just do config, not config, but we can do client dot guilds. I spelled client wrong. Client dot guilds dot count. Then we just do server. The nice thing about C sharp, whereas other languages aren't like this, is that most languages go based off of actual like the programming like decimal system, where we don't have 10. It decimal is 9 because we start from 0. C sharp, when it works with like count, also with like length and all that stuff, it actually goes to 1. It starts from 1, which is nice. So then we can just have this in there, and then it'll give us the exact amount. We don't have to like plus 1 or minus 1. But with this arrays, it goes based off of 0. So it starts from 0 and is a decimal number system, which is nice and confusing in a way. But once you get used to using C sharp, if you're newer, you get really like accustomed to it, and it's actually very easy to remember what does what, and like when to use the correct like programming decimal number system, whereas our like the humans decimal number system, which starts from 1. Okay. So we have that. That's all we need in there. Now we're gonna work with the message event. Okay. So in here, and I forgot to make this be async here. So you're gonna learn a couple of new keywords. Keywords are basically like returns a keyword, var is a keyword. Like keywords are just basically words that have functions to it. If that if you were wondering that, because I know there's some newer people that watch this video, so I want to explain stuff. But the first one is going to come up right here, and it's going to be var message equals arg as socket user message. So what does the as keyword do? As is basically like it works like typecasting. Typecasting here, if you were to use typecasting, it would look like this. I'm going to just do this because I want to. And then we just do like socket user message, and we just do arg. That's typecasting. Typecasting is just basically when we convert whatever the value is, or the type of something, into a different type. There is typecasting rules. There's rules such as you can't cast a double into an int, but you can cast a int into a double. Double is basically a float. Int is an integer. A float is basically the decimal number. There's casting rules like that. There's other casting rules, but there is like type conversion methods that you can use to convert one type that you can't necessarily use casting methods, or like ways of doing it, because of the casting rules. But you can have stuff like that because you can convert like an int to a double through that, I believe, but it depends. Because the reason why you can't cast an int to a double is because no, a double into an int, because a double is a decimal number, and decimal number is not technically a whole number. Integer is a whole number, which is int. So you can cast int in a double because you can express a whole number as a decimal number, but you can't do that with a whole decimal number as expressed as a whole number. But as keyword just works like that. It's just like that. It looks much nicer in a way, and most people will understand what that means. The reason why we can do this is because socket message can be converted into the other ones like socket user message, socket guild message, I believe. It's another one like you have it, but we want user message. Then what we want to do is var context equals a new socket command context, and we need to pass in the client and message. Okay, so this is going to be just like housing all over like our command context basically. Okay, now what we're going to do here is if message.author.isBot or message dot channel is, this is another keyword, I'll explain it, IDM channel, and we're going to return the is keyword here. What it does is kind of similar to the as, but rather than converting a type, we're not referencing, we're we are, I guess you are checking, you are not checking, you're referencing it kind of. Is basically when we're saying the type of this object is this type. So in this case, we're saying if message.channel is the type of IDM channel, then we're going to return. And that's simple. That's basically what the is keyword. Not many people know it, and they usually use the double equal sign, which just means exactly equals to. The is keyword is better when you're talking about types rather than values. I want to express, use the is keyword only for types when you're checking for types, not when you're checking for values, because what happens is if you use the is when you're checking your values, instead of checking what that value is, you're checking the type of that value and comparing it to the object that you're trying to check with. So if you were to have like a int x is and then you have like a string 0, you get false because it's checking to see if the x, which is an integer, is a string, not if it's equal to that. That's basically what it's basically saying. But in here, we're using Boolean logic, which I will probably make a video on, explain what Boolean logic is and how we use Boolean logic, which is very easy to understand. But you have to understand like there's ands, ors, XOR, NORs, and like there's lots of ways of expressing it, but there's certain ways you should do it. I will like do a video on that because that would be a good topic to talk about. But anyway, so now what we're going to do here is an int, not it, but int argPos is equals to, and we're going to do 0. Okay, so in the argPos is just going to be like, where are we looking for a prefix? So in our case, we're looking for the prefix in the first word that's in the message, and checking to see if it contains that. You'll see what I'm talking about. So we're going to do an if, and we're going to do a not statement. So we're going to say if whatever this value is, we're going to convert it as an inverter, and it's going to be whatever the opposite of whatever it is. I'll explain that later on in another video talking about Boolean logic. But anyway, so we do message.has string prefix, and then this is going to be config.bot.prefix. And then we want to refer. Refer just basically means we're referencing this object. So we're referencing argPos. So we're going to reference 0 basically. Okay, and then we want to do is another one. We're going to do or message.has a mention prefix, and we're going to pass in the client dot current, not current, but dot current user, and then we're going to do reference argPos. Okay, now we just return, and I spelled return wrong. There we go. So that's just checking to see if the message has a string prefix or mentions the bot. If not, then we're just going to return. Okay, now what we're going to do here is a var result is equals to await command, not command, await context dot, I was right, commands.execute async context argpos and underscore services. This is going to execute the command. And then what we're going to do here is some error handling, like just a small error handling. So what we're going to do is if result.is successful, so is not successful, then what we're going to do is here. Then what we're going to do is if result.error is exactly equals to command error, the unknown command, then we're going to return. Basically, that's just checking to see if the command that was asked for, if it does not exist, then we're not going to do anything because we don't want to do anything about it. It could just be a wrong command we don't want to execute. We don't want to do anything about it. We'll add more here. We'll add like more error handling later on, but that's just what we need because that one is the most annoying if you don't have it there. Okay, we're going to come back to bot here and we're going to come down to here. And then what we're going to do is await a new command handler. Services, we're going to pass services in. That then we do dot in it async. We'll wait a new, and we need to do handlers dot event handler because we can't do event handler because that's ambiguous and just means we have multiple classes named that and it does not know which one we're referencing. So we have to reference the assembly or the namespace of where it belongs to. So namespace is handlers here. And then we can just do services. Dot in the async. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Like we can't if we didn't have that there. See, it will throw an error because it's saying it's ambiguous and it does not know which one we're talking about because we also have another class called system.event-handler. So we need to have handlers here. There we go. Okay, now we have that. Now we're going to come back to the core and we're going to make a new folder. And this is going to be called commands. In here, we're going to make a new file or a new class. This class is going to be called information commands.cs. Okay, this is going to handle all of our commands that has to do with information such as latency, the bot information, help, who is, like that kind of stuff. So we're going to do a public class here. And what we need to do is this. So this is basically saying like inherits the colon. Inherits just means if the extending just means it's the child of X class, which means it inherits all the methods, variables, all the stuff from that class we are saying it extends from. Implements means that we're implementing an interface, meaning we have structure and we're going to use that structure. The colon just means we're implementing. Or not implementing, we're inheriting either one of those. So we're going to inherit module base, and we're going to pass in socket command context. Okay, now this is a module base. This is a module, so when we run the command, and the the bot, and the command handler, it will see this as a module, and it will load it. Okay, now what we're going to do is command. So we're going to do an attribute here. This is called an attribute. This is what it looks like. We're going to do an attribute latency, attribute alias, ping. If you want more aliases, you just do this and you can add more. You separate each one by a comma. Then we're going to do a summary here. And the summary is basically what is it this command do. So this command is going to display my latency, and you can also use the remarks here. Remarks I just use here for like demonstrating how to use the command, so we can just do latency here, or you can also use it like ping. Now what we're going to do is a public async task. It needs to be async task, and the name of this method can be whatever, but make sure it's related to what the command is. You can, even though you can name it whatever you want, just remember people are going to probably look at your program, and if it's weird and the names aren't helpful, then they won't understand what it's doing. Okay? Then what we're going to do here is a var builder equals a new embed builder. And we're going to do this. Okay? So in here, we're going to do title is equals to, and we're just going to say Pong. Then we're going to do description here. And what we're going to do is my latency is, and then we do context dot client dot latency, and we do milliseconds because latency and ping are both the exact same thing, but the correct term is actually latency. Ping just, like, if you say ping, it usually reference like back and forth, like that's what it actually means. Is ping just means how long it takes for me to send this message to X and get something back. That's ping. Latency means how long am I, like how late is the response basically. That's latency is the correct term, but ping is also works for it. It's just slightly means something else. So you can say either one, but I just prefer saying latency because that's the correct actual term. Next we're going to do is color. And what we're going to do here is some Elvis operators. Elvis is Elvis operators are basically just like if statements but for variables. You'll see what I'm talking about. It may look confusing, but I'll explain it real soon. So the first thing we're going to do is client, not client, because that doesn't exist here in the current scope. But context does because of socket command context and the module base. We now have access to the context. But context dot client dot latency is less than 100 question mark. So I'll explain a way to know and understand this, like how to structure it very soon. But we're going to say if it does exist or if it's true, then what we're going to do is color dot green or context dot client dot latency is less than 200. Then we're going to do color dot orange or color dot red. Okay, so this is a big one. Okay, so this may look confusing at first, but let me format this a little bit better. So this will make somewhat more sense. Try and figure out what's the best way to format this. Okay. So the how you know what it is let me make a comment block. I know it's going to be like that, but it's fine for now. So Elvis operator is using the question mark and a colon. So let's talk about the question mark first, because that's the first notation you would use for it. So the question mark here is basically, if you want to think about it, you're asking a question. So in our case, we're going to use color here, the color property, and whatever we're using it for. We're going to use that as examples. So the first one we're going to do is saying, is the latency less than 100? Question mark. This is a question. And then now what we're going to do is if it's true, then make the color, or then the value will be color dot green, or if the latency, or is the latency less than 200? If it's true, then the value will be orange, or color, or the value will be color.red. That is exactly what we're doing here. We're basically asking a question, and if it's true, then we want this value. But if it's not true, then we want to do this, or get this value. In our case, we're going to ask another question and say if the latency is less than 200. And if that is true, then we want the value of orange, or color.orange. But if it's not, then we want color.red. That's basically what the Elvis operators do. They're basically like a if statement, or like in um, a like variable declaration, which actually is called a conditional statement. Conditional just means there's conditions for this. In our case, we have conditions of seeing if the latency is less than of x. I'm going to delete this. Okay, and we have that. Okay, now next thing we need to do is await context dot channel dot send message async. Then what we want to do here is embed builder dot build. Okay, there we go. So right here, what we're saying is we're gonna wait for context.channel.send message. So we're gonna send a message to the channel of where the message that we receive originated from, and we're going to send a embed using the embed builder. But we need to build it, so we're going to build the embed builder, which will return an embed, and we're going to send that. So yeah, and we can actually test this. So we just run it. There we go. As you can see, this is the nice thing about Serolog is that it formats everything for us, which is nice, right? Okay, I'm gonna bring over my Discord real quick. Okay, now we're just going to do ping here, or latency. There we go. It sends it. And if I were to do ping, it works. As you can see, it works. So yeah, that's really it for this video, because it's a really long one, and it was just to set everything up. The next one will be shorter, and will be mostly about what subscribers are, how we use subscribers, how do we make subscribers, and also making a dynamic help command, and what's the difference between having a dynamic versus a static, and what's the benefits of both. An obvious reason is that dynamic is just much better. You'll see why I'm talking about. And then we will talk a little bit more about notations, like string notations, as well as some other keywords. So yeah, this is more education for C# and making a Discord bot. Two things in one. So yeah, if you need help, come to GPG, Giant Panic Global. I will put the link to this server in the description of this video. But if you need help, you can come here and you can ask me for help. You can go to the Discord net channel here in the programming support, and you can just ask for help. I will obviously try and help you as when I can. But if you want me to go over a certain topic before I leave, because I do have college and I'm technically on break for winter because of the whole situation that's happening in the world. If you want me to go over a certain topic, you can come here and you can go to this channel and you can type in what you want me to go over. This is suggestions of what you want me to go over. I don't have to always go over C# topics like just like Discord topics. I can go over C# topics such as like what I was saying, subscriber services, like all that kind of stuff. I can even go over JavaScript, like topics. I can also go over Java topics, a little bit in Rust topics as well, with like C++ a little bit. I will not do Python. There's already so many videos for Python, and I just don't like programming in Python, and I will not force myself to program in something I do not like. So please don't ask me if I can do one on Python, because I will obviously say no right away. Um, but if it's any other language, then I will most likely will say yes. If I deem it to be like actually something to go over, if not, then I'll just explain it right there for you. Like just explain it. So, but yeah, um, if you just need help or you want me to go over something, you can come to the server. You can also suggest stuff into this video, like the comment section. I usually always look at the comment section, and I will always like look at what you have to say. And I usually go over stuff that I see most people having the problems with. I know rules is going to be a big one, and I'm already having plans for that. It's going to be in the third episode. Um, so, yeah, in the third episode is going to be rules. We'll also do some permission stuff, maybe some moderation if we have time and such. So, yeah, this is a long one, and yeah, I am going to be done here. I'm probably not going to edit this because I think I did. I don't think this needs to be edited. So I'm sorry if it looks bad, but just bear with me. The next one I'll probably edit because it's shorter, but long ones I usually don't edit. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. And I already forgot. If you like this kind of stuff, if you like me going over tutorials and such, um, leave a like, and if you want to subscribe to this channel, it helps me to know if I'm doing a good job, if I'm going over topics that people actually want, and to know where I'm at with content of if this is actually helping someone or not. So please do that for me, but you don't have to. But it just helps me, and it will help you if I know if I'm doing something wrong or doing something right. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.